Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dan Lanning, the Oregon Ducks, for lack of better terms, just continue to roll in 2024, at least in my opinion, by far the most complete and impressive team that we see in all of the country. Coming back home after a big win against Michigan, hosting a Maryland team that uh, I think we can all agree that if Oregon plays good football, clean football, Oregon's going to win this football game. But I think for a lot of Oregon Duck fans, this game is kind of exciting because what does this Oregon offense look like if Tez Johnson is going to miss a couple of weeks? The passing attack has gone through Tez Johnson. Now, we saw some other names and some other guys step up for Oregon against Michigan. How does it look moving forward for Oregon on offense? That's the conversation I want to get into. Now, another thing you want to see if you're an Oregon fan, let's see a complete second half. Like, this is not the first time we've talked about Oregon looking like an unbeatable team in the first half and then just not playing that same way in the second half. I think if you're heading into this football game, you want to see Oregon put 4 quarters of dominant football together. Excited to get into this one. Now, before we do, and as always, I think most importantly, want to say thank you. I mean, we are going into the month of November. These preview prediction episodes have been just an absolute blast for the boys. The amount of support y'all continue to show, it means the absolute world. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, again, for the Oregon fans, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section in terms of what names are stepping up as pass catchers if Tez Johnson is indeed out for the next couple of weeks. And I think a lot of Oregon fans are very comfortable saying, hey, Tez Johnson, get right. We'll be okay the next couple of weeks. Ideally, we get him back for the Big Ten championship heading into the college football playoffs. Let's get into this Oregon offense. Now, I want to note that I thought the Oregon offensive line quite good against Michigan. Now, y'all know I'm a Michigan fan. Michigan as a team ain't that good. We obviously have some problems on the offensive side of the football, but that defensive line still rivals just about any defensive line that you'll see in the country. Josh Connerly Jr. was an absolute animal at left tackle. And in fact, Nishad Strother was really good on the inside as well. I mean, those were some of the question marks we had heading in was, hey, can this Oregon offensive line block up a really good Michigan pass rush on the road? We kind of got that answer. So I think a lot of Oregon fans have a lot of confidence. The confidence is growing in this offensive line, which again was the biggest problem that we saw to start the year. Dylan Gabriel looked really solid, like really in control of the pocket. There were some muddy pockets. I thought he managed the pocket really well, got outside the pocket when he needed to. Let's get into the question mark of who do we think steps up and how do we think Oregon tries to replace the production of Tez Johnson. Now, you look at this Maryland team, Oregon should do what they want on the offensive side of the football. You look at Oregon or Maryland saying 29 points per game allowed. That's 84th in the country. Maryland is solid against the run, very, very weak against the pass. And so Oregon should have their way in the passing attack. I think the more important conversation is, all right, who's stepping up to replace the target share that Tez Johnson has had? I think you first go to Evan Stewart. We kind of, and the Oregon fans who've been rocking with the fellas for a while know I look at Evan Stewart as like a wide receiver 1B in this Oregon offense. And although Tez Johnson got more of the targets, was more involved in that Oregon offense, we saw when Evan Stewart got his opportunities in the biggest moments against Ohio State, Evan Stewart's a top 10 wide receiver in the country. And so I look at Evan Stewart, he kind of, at least in my opinion, becomes that wide receiver one. I think if you're an Oregon fan, the other 3 wide receivers you're going to see a lot of is Trayshawn Holden and Justice Lowe. And what I will say about Lowe, we kind of knew Trayshawn Holden was a dude, just never got any national media attention because he's playing behind Tez Johnson and Evan Stewart. I've been extremely impressed with what Lowe can do. Now, I think the question is who can replace the yards after the catch that Evan Stewart gave you. One of the things that I've been playing around with is I wonder if we see Oregon go to some more 2 tight end sets. And we see Oregon do this, but I think they want to stay in those 3 wide receivers because they want Trayshawn and Tez and Evan Stewart all on the field at the same time. With Tez Johnson injured, I continue to say, like, you talk about one of the most dynamic weapons on this Oregon offense. I don't think it gets any better than Kenny Sadiq. And he doesn't get as much work as I want him to get, but every time he gets targeted, every time he is asked to do something with the football in his hands, good things happen. And I wonder if this over the next couple of weeks, with Tez Johnson maybe on the sideline, you can see kind of Kenny Sadiq really hit his stride heading into the college football playoffs. I think for an Oregon fan, that is something you might be really excited about. I think the other thing is you want to see Oregon be able to run the football against a good front seven, and that's been something that I have a lot of confidence with Oregon doing, right? The rushing attack was choppy early in the season. Ohio State, very good front seven. Oregon had success running the football. Michigan, very good front seven. Oregon had success running the football. Maryland's got a good front seven, top 25 in the country in terms of yards per carry allowed. You want to see Oregon continue to have that success running the football, headlined by Jordan James, who, again, I think is one of the most underrated backs that we see in the country. Flipping the sides, Maryland's quarterback, Billy Edwards, he's kind of fun to watch. I don't think he's the best quarterback in the Big Ten. I don't think he's the top 5 quarterback in the Big Ten. That being said, he can make some plays, and he's kind of gritty. He's an athlete outside of the pocket, and they got a really good receiver in Ty Felton. You think Tez Johnson gets a lot of targets in this Oregon offense. Ty Felton has 100 targets on the year for Maryland heading into this matchup. It's no secret that they want to go to Ty Felton, and very similar to how Oregon uses Tez Johnson, they move Ty Felton around all over the field. If you're Oregon, the number one goal heading into this matchup is how can we take away Ty Felton? Very good football player, but I think Oregon has the pieces to do so, whether it's Brandon Johnson at the nickel spot, whether it's Nico Reed or Jabbar Muhammad on the outside. That's what makes this Oregon secondary so hard to deal with is you can't really pick on anybody. Like, you can't pick on Brandon Johnson at the nickel. You can't pick on Nico Reed opposite Jabbar Muhammad. You certainly can't pick on Jabbar Muhammad because those 3 cornerbacks are so damn solid for Oregon. It's really hard for these offenses to find favorable matchups in the secondary. That's why the secondary has been really good. The one thing I'm looking at for Oregon is the pass rush to continue to morph into an elite unit. And again, it's hard to evaluate against Michigan because Michigan did not throw the football very often in that game. Look, Oregon had 7 tackles for loss. They didn't have any sacks, but 7 tackles for loss. We'll take that any day of the week against Michigan. Maryland's going to throw the ball a lot. I want to see this pass rush continue to step up, right? Whether it's Jordan Burch coming back from injury, who you could tell Jordan Burch was a little rusty, kind of getting his feet wet again. Not worried about Jordan Burch. You want to see Jordan Burch continue to get back to the form we saw of him before he got hurt in that practice before the Ohio State game. That version of Jordan Burch is a problem. Mateo Yu, Tatum Tuioti, Derek Harmon on the inside, who was just unblockable for Michigan on Saturday. We could not deal with him. Can you get after Billy Edwards, but also keep him in the pocket? I mean, to an extent, Oregon has struggled at times with keeping quarterbacks in the pocket. Where can you draw that line between, hey, we want to go and pin our ears back and get after the quarterback, but we also want to be really disciplined in our pass rush lanes and not let quarterbacks extend plays on us. That's kind of what I'm looking for. And it's a really hard line to kind of toe in terms of, hey, really pinning your ears back and getting after the quarterback, but also not letting them kind of squeeze out and get outside the pocket. Can Oregon continue to do that? Like, if you take away Ty Felton and you get after Billy Edwards, there's not really much this Maryland offense can do because they don't run the football a lot and they don't run the football very well. If you can do those 2 things, Oregon should have success. But again, this game to me looks a lot more like, hey, what do we want to see from Oregon as opposed to worrying about Maryland and what you have to take away. Like, this is one of those games where you want, if you're an Oregon fan or you're Dan Lanning, you just want to impose your will and play your game, not really worrying about what Maryland can do. Because I just don't think there's too many things that Maryland can really hurt this Oregon team with. Look, Dan Lanning to this point, and this has been what really has been one of the most impressive aspects about this Oregon team ever since week 2. They haven't ever showed up to a game unprepared, which again, I think you talk about culture, like that's Dan Lanning for you. Like, this team is ready to play every single time they step on the football field. Now, being ready to play in the second half, that could be a talking point. Hey, we've seen Oregon have some sleepy second halves the last couple of weeks and really all year. I'm not really sure what it is. I don't know if Oregon is trying to do some things that they want to work on almost. When you're up 28 points at half, like, hey, let's go run some plays that we want to get better at. that might be kind of a talking point they have in the locker room. But again, you want to see them play 4 quarters of football games because when you go to the Big Ten championship or you go to the college football playoffs, you're going to have to play 4 quarters of good football to win football games. Getting into the pick, Oregon, I just don't think you can bet against Oregon, especially at home. Maryland going across the country. Oregon should be able to do what they want on offense. It's hard to see Maryland having a ton of success. And if Oregon just plays 4 quarters of good football, they should win this game handily. They should cover the 25 points. We'll take Oregon here. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into that Tez Johnson conversation later on this week. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.